There we go. And yeah, so welcome in. Welcome to Metagov. I think a lot of you seem familiar. If you are not familiar, Metagov is a researchers collective, ephemeral group of people. We run these events every week, both community calls and seminars. This is a seminar, so it'll be more. We'll be learning today from Sylvain, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a second. And community calls are our format for joining and having a lot more in-depth discussion and collective learnings. We'll be excited today, next week. Today we're learning from Sylvain. Next week we will be learning from the Koi team. So it'll be at a little bit of a different time, not at 12 p.m., but at 4 p.m. EST. And we'll be learning about how they have built their system, which is super exciting, as always. And today, is it still noisy or did it just stop being noisy? Okay.
Stop, yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And today we'll be hearing from Sylvain. I'm very, very excited for the seminar. He is a digital infrastructure strategist and other such things, but one of the things that he has built is and co-founded is Starting Blocks, which is kind of that piece of trying to make data spaces which just allow large groups and like public and private companies to actually access and share data without needing to use global corporate clouds. So I'm very excited to hear about this very specific piece of digital sovereignty. And with that, I will pass it on to Sylvain.
Thanks, Ing. You should be able to see my screen, hopefully. Hello, everyone. I'm Sylvain. I'm the co-founder of Starting Blocks. We work on data interoperability and data spaces in particular, and we deploy data spaces. I will get back a little bit on this so that you know precisely what it means in my mouth, at least. And we've been working for a year now on a project with open source politics and the metropolis of Bordeaux to apply this concept of this data spaces to democracy. So the idea behind that, the motivation behind this data space is about this promises that the web had like 20 years ago about bringing people together to actually, debate more easily, find solutions more easily, and to provide a new wave of democracy. And 20 and something years later, that's not exactly what we see, and we can see trust in institutions that is collapsing. So there's, of course, a lot of reasons for that, but among these reasons, digitization of democracy has created a lot of fragmentation. As I often say, everybody demands to be heard. No one listens to anyone. We use tools to express ourselves, but we miss organization to actually hear each other and to do something with whatever we build from whatever content we generate, whatever opinions and needs we have on these tools. We use platforms that have algorithms, and these algorithms are designed to basically talk to our emotions, and that creates divisions instead of doing what the web was supposed to do, namely getting us together. So these algorithms that we use, because we use those platforms, create a lot of division. And then we had this illusion of direct democracy, like I am connected to the world, so I will be able to influence decisions. But that's not how democracy works, unfortunately, because same thing, we're way too many, we say way too many things, and that doesn't create something consistent. And what we're lacking is traceability, meaning I express myself, I give my opinion on what should be done, but I cannot see how this has influenced public decisions in any way. And same thing, we're a mass of people, but a democracy cannot be one leader with talking directly to one mass of unorganized citizens. Because if we look at how democracy was working before digitization, we actually had intermediaries. There's trade unions, there's associations, NGOs, you have all the professional trade associations, the chambers of commerce, and all these organizations were actually socializing people on the ground, and it was connecting all these people through networks of organization to institutions. The government, they were connected somehow to those federations of associations or trade unions and all that, and they were communicating to this. So not only it was a way for people to be connected to the public decision, but also a way for this organization to generate ideas and to connect these ideas to the governments and to the institutions. And so the political parties were actually creating ideas or proposing ideas in elections coming from those networks. And all these networks of intermediaries, which were actually the basis of how democracy worked in this modern democracy that we have in the 19th and 20th century, they became kind of obsolete because too slow somehow compared to the 140 characters of social media that is the direct way for the politicians to communicate with the people today. And so we have this kind of disconnection between the democracy that actually moved to the digital world and these intermediaries who do not play this role anymore somehow. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would be mad at me saying that, but I mean, in the way at least that institutions don't rely on them anymore the same way they used to not so long ago. So we have a lot of tools, digital tools that should work this way. And actually, I'm often amazed by the quality and the inventivity of digital tools for democracy. I mean, there's so many things out there, and there's a lot of very interesting tools, and at the same time, there's so much data, there's so much information. I mean, on social networks, we have all the opinions of millions of people. We have all the needs of people who have problems that they need solved. We have debates, we have discussions, we have all of that. But the thing is, we don't connect all of this. The amazing tools are not connecting to this incredible mass of data that we have. So we have a lot of tools. Some of them are very anecdotic because they have very little data, and a lot of data that's not organized at all, and we don't do anything with it except from being angry and yelling at each other. But that's basically most of this data. That's how it's used. So what we need actually is interoperability. Interoperability, it's a complicated word for a simple concept. It's the ability for different systems to work together without being designed together. So there's a lot of very simple examples. One example is the USB-C charger that we all have today. You maybe we forgot about it, but a few years ago, you were here with your phone out of battery, and you were looking for someone with the exact same brand as you, the same generation, because the next generation of phone didn't have the same charger, and it was a real mess to charge your phone. Today, at least in the European Union, I know that the European Commission pushed for all the manufacturers to have this, to agree on a way to have a charger that's compatible with any phone, and even the computers and a lot of different devices today. You can charge them with the exact same charger, and that means any charger can charge any device, and that's exact definition of interoperability. In Europe, we also have this this example for trains, because a few decades back, there were a few differences between the train systems in the different states in Europe, and in particular the width of the railway, the space between the two rails of the railway, and so the trains had to stop at the border, and people had to move the things from one train to another. And so same thing, the European Commission imposed a common space between rails all across Europe, and now the trains can go all around the European Union because we agreed on a specific format for rails. So any train can drive on any railway in Europe. So same thing, interoperability between trains and railways. Here, of course, we're talking about interoperability of data. And that means any app can use data coming from any other app. Because today you use apps, I have my own apps, and well, I cannot do anything with you. I cannot talk to you. I cannot find you. I cannot find your products, your IDs, your messages, your whatever, because I'm not using the same apps as you. Or I have to use the same app, and then we use what we call a platform, which is one app that everybody has to use. And all the other tools are basically useless because they're not connected to the data. And so still the same European Commission, they've been pushing this concept of data spaces, which means basically this. It means basically any organization or any app can access data wherever it is in a very secure way. There's a lot of work on contract passing that secures how your data can be used, under which conditions, and so on. I'm not going to go into the technicalities here, but the idea is that it gives sovereignty over your data. In the data space, you have your data, you decide who can use it, you decide in which conditions, and any app can be used to access it. And so the apps become kind of dissociated from data. It's become two different things. Instead of one platform, which is apps and data and users all together in a data space, you have apps, you have data, and you can use any data to use to access. You can use any app, to access any data. And with a shared governance, because data space is thought of as a commons, and instead of one platform that decides who can interact with whom, who sees what on the network, you have an open governance on how you can access data and which data you will have, and so on and so forth. A few examples of data spaces. In the health industry, there's quite a lot of data that's that about you, basically. Your doctor has data about you, your pharmacy has data about you, the hospitals you've been to, and they need to share information with each other, and for good reasons, because when you when you on an emergency, you enter a hospital, you don't want the hospital to spend 3 days knowing what they should know about you. So there's different ways to do that, but the idea of the health data space is to enable the data to stay where it should be, under the control of the patient or the citizen, and you as a citizen, you can decide who can access your data. So basically what it means for you is that instead of having a lot of data scattered around like you have today, and you have no idea what this data is, what information people have about you, and you cannot use it because you don't even know where it is. The idea is to give you access to all the information about your health, and you are the one who decides to share this information with your doctor, with your insurance company, with your hospital or pharmacist or whatever you need to. But then you keep the control over this this data. Another example in the agriculture field, there's a lot of data in agriculture. Farmers use a lot of data about the land, about their practices, about the inputs that they put in the fields, and so on. And all of this defines the methods that they use. And when you buy a product in the supermarket, you have no idea where it comes from. And it's actually very hard for you to differentiate a tomato that's been made with a very healthy, regenerative method from a tomato that's been made in very bad ways, very bad conditions. A data space is what would enable all the sharing of all these data, so that you can have a very clear and objective diagnostic about the product you're buying, and you would know where this product comes from, how it's been made, by whom, what intermediaries it's been through, and all of that. Because today there's no, the fact that this data is not accessible doesn't give any incentive to the farmers to actually use better methods, because if they try to invest in better methods, they will be in the same basket as the other ones who don't. So so data space for food and agriculture is a way, among other things, it's a way for consumers to be better informed about what they're eating, and who's doing what, and what's local, what's organic. And I mean, organic is kind of easy because we have labels that work quite well, but we only have one label where actually there's a lot of diversity of good practices that could be shared. I'm going on a third example that will lead us to the democracy data space. It's a media data space that we're working on actually at Starting Blocks, that gathers all the European industry of media, which means press agencies, newspapers, television, movie, radio, podcast, books, culture in general. There's a lot of use cases in this data space. In this data space, one of them is about sharing assets. So, for example, when a television decides to broadcast a program, often they need to make subtitles for it, but they don't know if someone else has already done subtitles or already made subtitles for them. So, in many cases, TV channels, for example, make subtitles for movies that already have subtitles in that language. So, and I say subtitles, but actually the same applies to audio description, to 3D models, to tagging plans, and all. There's a lot of assets around a work, an audiovisual work. And so a data space is a way for a TV channel, in that example, to actually find all the assets that match with a current program they want to broadcast. Another use case is about fact checking. So press agencies and newspapers, they have journalists currently working today on fact checking information. You have a politician who said something. Is it true? Is it false? Well, it's their job to actually go through the whole thing and actually give context that's unable to know what's true and what's false in what politicians, for example, say, or other people. There's this content is very interesting for AI companies, because AI companies want to rely on very verified data, and the data space is a way for AI companies to actually find the right fact check about a specific subject at the moment they need for example, a request that has been made by their users. And so if we apply this to a democracy, it gives us there's a lot of data out there that's very valuable from a democratic point of view. You have, of course, all the deliberations, all the contributions, also the deliberations from assemblies, from the parliament, or all the opinions and votes and everything on different subjects. But you also have, I often insist on the fact that social media is, to me, at the core of online democracy, because that's where actually the debate happens. And so you have all this content that's completely unorganized today, but that's actually very relevant to know who thinks what, who says what. You have all the what I call civic proposals, but all the reports, maybe, or the petitions, or the content coming from the society in general, about who thinks what, who proposes what as a new regulation, or so on. And then you have all the fact checking as well that should come on top of the social media, because, as you know, not everything is true on social media. So being able to connect all this content from social media with the fact checking that has been checked by professional journalists has a lot of sense. And then you have also all the open data, because, yeah, of course, to have a good decision, you need to have a good informed decision. So if you put all this data together, if you make all this data become accessible, and you equip people with the right tools that can make use of this data to actually give the right information at the right time, about who thinks what are the different possibilities, what are the situation on a certain thing, and what are the proposals relatively to this situation. Well, then you open the door to a very different democracy, where with way more transparency and way more capacity to actually take into account what everybody thinks. And instead of having lobbying that's been done between closed doors, you could have all the interests of the different people, because, of course, we don't have the same interests. But if we put them all on the table, then we can see that through all this data, then it's a different democracy, I guess, that happens then. So what does it mean concretely for citizens? For example, it means you can have a way to actually make visible who thinks what, and how and where you can contribute, like what consultations are available, like what consultations are open at the moment. If your city is making an online consultation and an NGO is making another consultation, well, the fact that to be able to see all these things together and track how your contribution can be used then by the decision-making process by your city or your state or whatever, and be able to participate at the different levels, but still have this contribution that can be used, because maybe you did contribute to a petition or a consultation by an NGO, but then you don't want this contribution to be lost forever. You want this contribution to be able to be reused by the consultation of the city, if the city makes a consultation on the same subject later, and also have a way to see the state of the debate, what people think, what is a consensus, what idea is a consensus, what as idea is not, and what different opinions there can be on a specific idea. For civil society, it can be used in both ways, meaning it can be a way for civil society organizations to talk to their members or to people in general about a specific subject, involve people on a certain subject they're pushing or they're trying to promote, and then from all this content that can come from the ground, be able to filter, to organize, to create synthesis, so that they can create specific content that can be reused to talk to institutions. To basically, instead of saying me, I'm a member of a NGO and I think that something, if I can say, this is what I gathered from so many people, and there's all these, and with the links, I mean, it's not only me who says that. I mean, we can create traceability here as well to actually show how many people think that on a certain part of society or so on. Then it can be a very powerful way for those organizations to be able to organize ideas and push them to institutions. But the other way around, for a policymaker, it's a very efficient way to connect to society. I know, to talk again about the European Commission, the policy officers of the European Commission, they spend a lot of time doing consultations, but in most of the consultations they push, they only have answers from the European Federation of something and the European Association of something. They only have people living in Brussels who answer the thing. And for them, being able to see the debate or the discussion that happens all around the Europe, and being able to push a specific consultation to one specific institution in Bulgaria, I don't know, in the case of the European Union, or in Wyoming, I can say, for the American government, and not being limited to Washington or Brussels. That's a very efficient way for them to actually open their scope from what they currently have to the people who are on the field, the real people on the field. So far, what we've done is, so we've started the project last year, and we've done a first experiment with the metropolis of Bordeaux. The idea from a Bordeaux point of view, so the metropolis of Bordeaux is a metropolis of 28 cities, and all of these 28 cities already have a consultation platform to ask questions to citizens. So it was not really a possibility for the metropolis to open yet another platform, because obviously you cannot tell citizens, well, if it's a question coming from the city, then you have to go to this platform, and if it's a question coming from the metropolis, then you have to go to the other platform. And then the other problem was that a lot of questions were concerning not only the metropolis but also some of the cities. And so what Bordeaux wanted was a system to enable them to push a consultation for specific cities. For example, if they want to create a bike lane that goes through 3 different cities of the metropolis, then they want to be able to push those consultations to those 3 specific cities. And and so as a citizen, you go to the platform you're used to, and you see all the consultations that make sense for you. So that's a very small, like the very basic use case, the first step use case, I guess, for the data space. But that's, the idea is really to make those consultations like not limited to one platform, but being able to flow around different cities that use the different tools. And on top of this experiment, we've built a prototype of a tool that enables, for example, the citizen to have visibility on all the ongoing consultations, and to get some AI-generated content based on the content of these consultations. So it can be synthesis, it can be same thing, consensus-driven content, and with the idea to show that the data is there, it's accessible, and what can we do with it? So we've built this prototype, and we now are. We have a new use case that we are working on. We're hoping to get the funding for it we've applied and we're hoping to get it soon, about equipping civil society organizations with the same kind of tools so that they can ask questions to their members or to citizens and be able to show that we can do something, we can do a common synthesis with data coming from different organizations working on the same subject in different places. So that's basically the idea. The idea behind a data space is really that it's a commons. So it's basically a set of standards that you have to apply. Same thing as with the USB-C charger. If you want to be compatible, you just have to put a USB-C charger on your device. So same thing for this data space. It's, for any civic tech organization, if you add the right APIs on your system, then you become naturally compatible with the data space. Same thing for democracy or civil society organizations or for citizens. Using a tool that's compatible gives you the way to actually join this data space and to both contribute and get the possibilities that come with it. So everyone can join. You don't have to ask anyone permission. You can just, you have to learn what it means technically, but that's basically it. And so, yeah, I'm inviting everybody to actually join the movement and to put the things together so that we can build together a data space that can give space to a new generation for our democracies. So that's it. Yeah, I give you my email address. There's a vision paper for the data space that we've published. There's the QR code here, we're not too many, so I'm very happy to discuss it if you have any remarks or questions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that lovely presentation. There's a couple of questions that have been coming in through chat. And as always, if you have a hand, please raise it right now. We'll start with Anne from Anne's questions in chat.
Great. I'd just like you to talk a little bit more about choice in enrolling in the data space. To use an American idiom, I often call this the Hotel California problem. You check in, but you can't check out because you're required to provide your data. So you don't really have an option. Everybody who uses your data requires it. So even if you, you sort of get back to that I don't want to participate versus full participation problem. How do you manage sort of that encouraging that kind of choice in your governance?
I'm sorry, do you mean if you start using the data space and then later you want to become more private, for example?
That, and also, for example, in the health space, there's, this is well understood. If you're required to provide your medical record data for any prescription, you have to do that. You cannot opt out because the pharmacist is required to ask for that or they can't give it to you because it would be unsafe. So it's kind of like you don't really have a choice. At least the better part is you're giving your data, but maybe, I don't know, maybe you don't even want to know because you don't have a choice.
I'm not going to insert too much on the health side because it's a very specific thing and I'm not a specialist. And it's a very it's a regulation thing, I guess, in this case. So, but as for the democracy data space, joining the data space to me doesn't mean sharing your data. It means becoming compatible. And then sharing your data is an active movement. And we can imagine cases, for example, where an NGO makes a debate that's closed, that's private, because we don't want to disclose, all the things that are being debated inside the NGO. And then shares the conclusion in a public way. And so the data space is really a medium. It's not, it's not a regulation or so. And hopefully we will not move towards a world where the government forces us to make all the debates public. But yeah, if we don't talk about regulation, then the data space is just a medium that enables to share easily. There's data here, we make it available, and then it becomes available to policymakers, for example. But that doesn't prevent to have private data. And the other thing is that with a data space, data theoretically isn't copied. Basically because it becomes accessible, you don't have to take it and to copy it into the next platform as you have today. And so if you stop sharing the data, then it stops being accessible through the other systems. Whereas today you have to copy the data into the new system, and then once it's copied in many different places, well, you basically lost control over it because it's in way too many places. So to me, a data space is a tool that gives you more control over the data, and so that's one way I would answer your question.
Yeah, the deletion point I think is really
Exactly.
appropriate because if you have the right metadata, you can actually delete.
Exactly.
Great, thanks.
Exactly.
Cool. And then I know that there's another stacked chat question from Steve.
Yeah. Okay. So my question was just, do you have a demo schema that you can show us how you would think a good way to structure data to include it in this common database would be?
You mean from a technical standpoint?
Yeah. Just show me some JSON.
It
always makes me go
sure.
crazy.
I know that Simone is here. Actually, he should be the one talking because Simone has been working on an ontology that structures the data. And we've followed this ontology on the prototype we've developed. I am wondering if I can find the JSON like right away, because
You can also say you can follow up as well.
I can follow up. Yes, I guess it's the best way to do that. I mean, if Simone has something to say about this ontology, that could be relevant.
I can send you the link in chat.
Gorgeous. Cool. All right, then Adam.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much for the presentation. It looks like a really cool project. So I have a couple of questions. So first of all, I guess I'll say them both together, but they're very different questions. But my first thought is about how, data spaces in Europe have, typically been a project of the state. The data strategy put forward the first tranche of data spaces, really, and now it's like national governments mostly that are creating data spaces in Europe. But the way that they are proposing these data spaces is very different from how you're conceptualizing them, right? The way that, Germany and Switzerland and France are talking about data spaces is as a means of enacting digital sovereignty, right? In terms of geopolitics, right? But what you're talking about is you're talking about commons-based governance and, these kinds of things, which I would put more away from digital sovereignty into a bucket more like digital self-determination or something like this. So under the framing of a data space, how do you kind of navigate these two competing frames of what a data space is? Because they're very different. The state-based model and a more individual or community centric governance, all that kind of stuff model. So that's one question, but I will also say the other one so I don't lose my spot. The other thing is that open data and openness and transparency, making all of this stuff available has historically failed to actually lead to use. Right? That's one of the major issues with the open data movement of the last 15 years, right? So how do you how do you build demand for this democracy data space in a way that will actually enable it to be sustainable in the long term? Granted, of course, this is probably something that is not settled right now among yourselves, but I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Cool. So on the first question, I wouldn't put it things like that, because I mean, obviously, where I agree with you that data spaces in the beginning were coming from the European Commission and some European states who understood what was going on and some didn't. But yeah, it was a political push in the beginning. But I wouldn't put this as two different things. I think there's a lot of, I see it as a continuum, between a lot of different visions of what a data space should be. And my definition of a data space is very broad, and it's really any kind of systems, decentralized systems where people exchange data with each other without relying on the platform. You can probably find definitions that are where way more strict, and where people would include some specific protocols or something like that. But when I talk about data spaces, I really include a lot of different things, including emails. For example, to me, emails are a data space, because I send you an email. I don't know what server, what app, what where you store your email. I don't know anything about that. I just send an email to your email address and it works. So that's why I would include emails in data spaces. There's a they were coming in the beginning from from a very political point of view, but at the same time they were involving private companies. And so nowadays we see more and more data spaces that are initiated by private companies. And so that's why I wouldn't say there's on one hand public data spaces and on the other hand community data spaces. Obviously it's still a work in progress. It's still a bit complicated. It's still a lot of investment necessary. So you don't see just citizens getting together to build a data space. Hopefully in a few years it will be the case, because things will become simpler and it will become easier for anyone to just start their own thing. But at the moment it still requires some investment. So I guess the answer to your question is I mean, even in the state or public pushed data spaces, there is this definition of decentralized sovereignty, like every participant keeps their sovereignty on their data and on their own participation to the thing. So I guess the best way to answer that is to say, it's there, it's accessible. I mean, it's an open standard. Let's just use it. We don't need their permission. Anyone can just do it. So if we let only governments use these things, then yes, data spaces will be a government thing. If private companies use it a lot, then it will be a private thing. And if communities use it, then it will be a community thing. But yeah, it's not something where we have to ask permission. We can use it. That's what I said in my presentation in the end. Anyone can just do it. So yeah, I guess that's my answer. And the second question was, open data and how we create incentive. I guess, yeah, I don't think it's exactly the same dynamics as open data. I think editors that are not like software editors, I mean, that are not in a monopoly situation, do understand the interest of data spaces. So I think, for example, in the democracy field, the civic tech field, I think understands very well and sees the interests. So I think it can be driven by editors, but not only. It's not enough to have editors driving it. We also need to have society users. And so that's why at the moment we're trying to involve as many civil society organizations as possible, because if we have civil society organizations saying, my job of pushing ideas to the institution was way easier thanks to the data space, then I think, yeah, we have, proven what we need to prove. At this stage, that's there we are. I cannot say we have a momentum with millions, on the scale up phase. We're not there yet, but we're trying to, we definitely have interest from civic tech organizations, and now we are trying to get as many civil society organizations to join.
Cool. Thank you for that. And Marc-Antoine?
First, fascinating work, and thank you. I'm looking at the ontology, and I'm looking at a lot of the work you're doing. And if I get it right, the unit is public debate, participation, and deliberation, really. Now, are there, like if somebody is across many debates, of course, they may have outsized weight. But more important to me is, how do you identify the issues across debate? Like this issue is the same as the issue in another debate, maybe in another location, maybe in another, or maybe it's subtly different. And how is it subtly different? And like I care a lot about concept disambiguation. Sorry, that's my hobby horse. But I think it's extremely important in public debate.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a very good question. I wouldn't say I have a magic wand on this one. The only magic wand I want to use is I want to get out right now is AI, which kind of helps somehow by, no, of course, but I guess it's AI plus human. I guess at this stage I don't think where I can say anything better than that. No, the other possibility as well is classification. Like if we know that we're in a certain specific field, it's been classified, so we can match this, and then AI can turn this into statements with a margin of error. I guess, yeah, it depends, I guess, what you're trying to do, but if we're handling mass, then AI statistically can be relevant, even though there are errors, but if we have enough, depending on how good. Yes, exactly.
Provided the error is
exactly
is
low enough, yes.
Uniform, which it often isn't, but that's another story.
Right. No, absolutely. No, absolutely. I wouldn't say I have a magic one for this one, but yeah, I guess at this stage we're trying to make the data available.
Fair enough.
It is too much data. I mean, at this stage, unfortunately, it's not too much data. so we're trying to make enough data available and enough data on the table, and then we will have the problem you're mentioning, and there will be more work definitely to be able to solve it.
Fair enough. Extremely interesting, and I'd love to talk about some of this. I've worked on a similar project way earlier for public deliberation and did work on ontology, and would like to exchange. So let's.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Totally. Lots of ontology discussions. And a quick question coming in from me is around identity and how you're holding that. You mentioned everybody can use a shared identity across all these different apps and spaces, but I'm wondering how you're managing that, especially in an EU-sized thing. There's different governments involved, and maybe some people are less comfortable sharing their identity with governments. So what is that current solution looking like?
Sure. So actually, EU is an easy question easy one for this one, because the European Union is pushing a standard for identity, for digital identity, that's called ADAS. So supposedly in some time, it's not completely deployed yet, but it's being deployed, and every state will have digital identities compatible with these things. So it should be easy at a EU level to have verified identity and a state verified identity. And then sometimes you don't want to share your identity, depending on the system. But it's a matter of decision for the tools or for the deliberations. Sometimes it is required to prove your identity. I mean, if you vote, of course, we want to prove your identity. But if we express opinion on a certain subject, anonymous comments may be very relevant. So the data space doesn't tell you if you should force the identity to be proven or not, I guess it depends on cases. And I guess the whole point is to make the two compatible, some deliberation with proven identity and some debates with anonymous comments, and all of them can be used together. And that's the whole point of the data space.
Okay, cool. I'll see Anne had another question thrown in chat.
Let's go back to governance. That's everyone's interest here. So how do you govern decisions about the ontology and metadata? Who decides?
Maybe
So first, sure. Oh yeah, sure, Simone, if you want to answer this one.
in this kind of stuff for W3C community maintained ontology, in general, the people put a GitHub issue, and that there is someone that maintains the ontology that right now I don't know, but yeah, it's a matter of interoperability. So if there is a gap, we try to fix it.
WC3 has been amazingly effective, and I'm not sure anybody knows why, at avoiding capture by interest groups. So I think that's a really good example, but it's something to think about who's going to decide about these in a way that avoids any one interest group getting their way every time.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to say is that compared to a centralized system, a data space reduces the amount of governance necessary, because basically you can store your data wherever you want, you can use the app wherever you want, so we don't have to debate about that. The only thing we have to debate is the ontology and the protocols, of course. What I was going to say, there are things like W3C, but there is a very good example at the moment. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, we're not at the stage where interest groups are trying to influence the democracy data space. But Simone has been working on an ontology with other people. But then the Swiss government is, there's a Swiss group that's working on another ontology. And actually, there's this current debate on, there's two ontologies, we should converge, where should discuss about it. I think the W3C could be a good place for that, but I don't know, Simone, if you've had discussion with the Swiss, but I guess that's good example of we need to find a way to manage this governance.
Yep. And you mentioned the ag sector. That's an excellent example of how not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the companies are not dumb, and so they looked at that and said, "Oh, standards, sure, we'll take over those standards. We'll decide." So, and they did. So now
Absolutely, yeah.
John Deere more or less owns all the ag data because they influence the standards to the point where between that and no rights of repair, they've got a lock on everything.
Yeah, John Deere's pretty sneaky like that.
Yeah, and that's my favorite example of indirect capture by standards and metadata.
Right.
So I think WC3 has been great, and I'm glad you're working with them.
Cool. I'll pass it to Adam for, I think, our last question of the day.
Yeah, thanks. I always like to ask this to people who are more plugged into the European data space community than I am, which is just, so for example, in agriculture, that was the first one that I wondered, have you seen any movement at all in any of these other data spaces besides health?
Depends what you call movement. There's a lot of movement because there's a lot of money involved. So there's a lot of projects going on. If you're talking about actual results and actual benefits for end users, then it's very variable from one project to another. When it comes to ag, actually, we're working on an ag data space, but in the US, not in Europe. We are discussing with European actors, but at the moment, the development is happening in the US. So yeah, I'm not the best position to answer on but I guess the good thing is there is something going on, and and we can see more and more private sector people trying, understanding that maybe a platform is not the right solution for my problem. Basically, that's what people think. And yeah, at the moment, things are a bit slow, and I'm not sure, these are big projects, sometimes pushed by the European Commission. So, it's not something that happens in 2 weeks. So, but there's a few very interesting examples. There's, of course, the automotive industry in Germany, who is the historical data space. There's a few use cases that are interesting there. You have the mobility sector, especially in France, which has very interesting use cases. Yeah, and a few others. There's a few interesting things, but it's still early. Even though it's been time, but it's still early.
Totally. Awesome. I see your hand, Steve, but I think we are just going to close this off. I know I'll start a little follow-up thread, and Sylvain is in the Metagov Slack, so you can feel free to ping him there for additional questions.
Sure,
But
with
thank
pleasure.
you again. Thank you again for this presentation. This was really helpful. I know I've been meaning to sit down and really sit with data spaces because it's been coming up a lot, and we've been talking about it a little bit, and I'm like, I just need the walkthrough. So I've been very grateful for this independently as well. But it's time to everyone unmute while Zoom mutes our claps as we clap and appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Tiny
thanks a lot for having me.
Brilliant. Well, we'll send you the
Merci
recording
beaucoup.
and see you around. Bye.